Hi, Bill Kenny here, and welcome to our webinar on walking the trade show floor, how to get value when you can't exhibit. It's a real pleasure to be with you today and to be speaking on this topic. It's something that we see people get challenged by quite a bit, and that is how do we get value as we're walking through a trade show? What are the things we need to do? What are the tools we should have? Are there certain languaging that we should have? Is there a certain focus? All those things are going to be on our agenda for today. We're going to hit several topics fairly quickly, and we want to do that in a way that kind of keeps things moving here. So I'm going to switch over to my slides, but the whole idea here is to get you engaged. Feel free to shoot me over some questions. I'm going to share my contact info at the end. Certainly happy to discuss any of this further with you, but the real goal today is to give you some a place to start, and so that you can very quickly get much better at attending and getting a lot out of trade shows. So let's hop into it here, and I'm just going to advance my slides and hopefully, there we go. Okay, so here's the trade show floor, obviously, and what we're looking to do is figure out how do we navigate this floor and the various features that are in a trade show so that we get the most out of it. When I say features, there may be a workshop area, there may be various receptions and social events that we need to take advantage of. How do we use all of those resources, those assets, to maximize our value, our time, so that we get the most out of these opportunities? So our agenda is pretty simple. We're going to set the table. In other words, we're going to talk about some sort of background information so that we have good context and are ready for the primary topic. And as we get into talking about trade shows and walking through, we'll talk about preparation, and then we'll talk about some of the things that we'll do on the trade show floor. And then finally, we'll get into what do we need to do for follow-up, and what are the tools that we have available for us there. Just so you have a little bit about me, I'm the founder and client advocate for a company called Meet. We help business-to-business growth companies effectively exhibit at trade shows. And so our clients are all over the world. Many are offshore and entering the US and North American market. And then we have some US clients that are growing quickly here as well. But ultimately, our target client, or our best client, are those that are really at the inflection point of growth and ready to take off. That's something we are very good at, helping companies get traction and scale. So our services kind of come in four buckets. We develop the strategy. In other words, we will build a plan of all the possible trade shows and have great recommendations in terms of which ones the organization ought to participate in based on who they're targeting. And we'll provide staff for exhibiting. We'll also get the executive speaking opportunities, and we do a whole bunch of sales support, everything from appointment setting to all sorts of competitive intelligence work, real variety of things. So let's get into our topic. So why trade shows? And again, this is a little bit of background so that we make sure that we have good context. So again, sort of focusing in the B2B area, most of our marketing dollars or most of our marketing effort are spent in the hopes of getting together face to face with our target prospect. And the cool thing about trade shows is that our prospects are there, or at least some of them are there. The challenge is that they're not labeled. So in other words, whether it's 1,000 or 10,000 or 100,000 people that are there, our audience is maybe a fraction of a percent to 1 to 2 to 3 to 4%, something like that, of the audience are our prospects. And so we want to make sure also that we agree on what a prospect is. Our company defines a prospect as someone who has a need, they have money, and they're urgent. And they have to have all three in order for them to be a prospect. So when we talk about prospects, that's how we're defining it. It's a very small group of people. And many of us have suspects, people that have one or two of those attributes, but they don't have all three. And again, we want to focus on identifying and attracting prospects, people who have need, money, and are urgent for a solution to the problem that we solve. So our objective when we go to trade shows is really three things. We want to connect, we want to learn, and we want to meet. And let me just go into explaining what I mean by that. So when I say we want to connect, we want to meet people who are our target. And so it may be, we're looking for prospects. We may be looking for strategic partners. There may be, we may be looking for great employees, whatever the case is, but we want to have that well-defined and we want to make those connections. We also want to learn, and there are really a couple of things that we might want to learn. So there are going to be, in many conferences, are going to be educational opportunities. Many folks will go to educational opportunities that are of interest to them. We would suggest going to educational opportunities that are of interest to your prospect for two reasons. One is you're going to meet prospects there. That's kind of a good thing. Two is you're also going to learn their language. You're going to learn some of the current things that are a challenge for them, that they're expanding their knowledge on, that are instrumental to their goals and so on. But ultimately, it's much more congruent with growing your business to learn what your customer needs to know and go to places where they're learning. The second is, and these are my spies, but the second thing we want to learn about are our competitors. We want to learn what they're up to, what changes they're making, how they're presenting themselves to the market, all of that. So we want to be able to do a little bit of competitive intelligence. And then we want to meet. And when I say meet, I mean one-on-one meetings. And so this isn't, just to meet people in the aisle. This is actually getting together, sitting down with people who are maybe already in our pipeline, their current prospects, maybe their current customers, and we have additional opportunities to penetrate the account further or to find ways to solidify our relationship. Either of those is great. And then also we may want to meet with strategic partners, or maybe we have a particular position that's open in our company and there are some good candidates that will be at this particular event. Whatever the case is, having one-on-one meetings is really important to leveraging this, because you think about most events, people have traveled in from a long distance. You probably traveled in from a long distance. And the idea is we can have, whether it's 5 or 10 or 15 one-on-one meetings during a few-day trade show, and ultimately saved ourselves many, 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 many miles and kilometers of travel. So we want to take advantage of this time when we're all in the same place. So here is a real challenge we see with a lot of people when they look at trade shows, whether they're trying to decide what trade shows to participate in or how to participate in them. The idea of focus is really a huge challenge and opportunity. So this sort of metaphor I'm going to use is it really underlies all of what makes marketing effective, and that is when we talk about focus. So this is an image of actually all the species of freshwater fish in America. And so we'll even expand this metaphor to tell you that there are 20,000 species of fish globally. So 20,000 species of fish. So if you talk to a fisherman, what they're going to tell you is, if you ask them the question, what's the first decision you make? What they're going to tell you is the first decision they make when they decide they're going to go fishing is, what do they want to catch? And then from there, that tells them where they're going to go fishing, what body of water, what depth, and so on. And then from there, that tells them what bait they're going to use. And that's ultimately, if you can make in marketing those three fundamental decisions, what do you want to catch? will tell you where you're going to go, will tell you what bait you need to use. And so you really need to define that buyer persona, that target customer really well, because that will very much help you evolve what events you're going to go to, and then what value proposition and what offer you're going to use to entice and enroll people. And ultimately, that's really what you're trying to do. No matter who you're trying to attract, you having that kind of focus is really key. If you say I'm going to go fishing, you're going to fail. But if you say I'm going to go fishing for tuna or for striped bass or for trout, or certain kind of trout, subspecies, then it becomes much easier, and ultimately we'll know where to go from there, and we'll know what bait to use, and ultimately, as you know, fishermen will often test different baits. They'll see what's actually working today, and we want to use those same kind of tools. So again, part of our background, we want to make sure we're focused and choosing the type of fish that we're going to target and being very narrow in terms of the subspecies. So you want to develop a buyer persona, and it's easy enough to Google this, but you're going to see all different types of format. But the idea is that you look at the person who you're selling to, or you feel is your best target, and you're going to experiment with this. But ultimately, this is sort of a prototype of what a good customer looks like. And then, of course, as you mature this, you'll be able to target those ideal customers, those buyer personas, and identify the events and utilize the right offers, the right value propositions that will attract them. And again, you'll continue to evolve this as you go forward. But the idea being, you want to have target buyer personas, and you may have one or two or three or four by product or service, because there are various use cases, and each use case likely has a unique buyer persona that you'll target. And a specific event will have kind of probably likely one type of buyer persona, maybe two types that are there that you can attract and interact with. So again, focus on a specific and narrow buyer persona. Really, really important. So now we've kind of chosen the events that we're going to go to, and we're sort of getting ready to walk through an event. And we need to, maybe it's 2 or 3 weeks before the event, and we're going to begin getting prepared. So we want to preset as many meetings as we can, and we want to preset meetings with our current prospects. We want to preset meetings with our current customers and our strategic and channel partners who are going to be at the event. Again, leveraging our time, leveraging our travel, making sure that the event is really strong for us by setting the table, making sure that we've got some great meetings set. And again, taking advantage of this time. And what really makes relationships better is when we move them from a superficial level to a higher level of trust. And that's going to happen through face-to-face interaction, and where we can really look people in the eye and they can look us in the eye, and build that relationship. We also want to, as much as possible, schedule or preset stop bys. And this is when we would stop into someone's booth. And the challenge, if we don't preset them, is we may catch them at their booth. But more often than not, if you go to many trade shows, you know that people don't stay at their booths all day. They may be there for half the day, and then they're out, whether they're at educational workshops, or they're out walking the floor, whatever the case is, or they're one-on-one meetings. But you want to, as much as possible, set a time to meet people at their booths if you're going to be walking through the booths, and there are certain people you want to meet. So set the table is really important. You want to have a plan. So, making sure that you think about what booths you want to visit, and you kind of mark them out, and check them off as you go by them. And that way you make sure that you get in all the ones that you want. What workshops you're going to attend also should be in your plan. And again, think about the ones that you're target buyer personas will be at. You want to learn their language. You want to meet more of them. And what other events you want to attend. Maybe there are some receptions you want to go to. Maybe there are some parties or maybe some executive briefings that one of your strategic partners is doing, whatever the case may be. Yeah, but make sure you mark those down as well. So the third item in preparation are the tools. What tools should we have and have assembled before we go to our trade show? Number one is we want to make sure we have a goal, and it may be a couple of different goals, but that probably is how many people you want to meet that fit in a certain bucket. You want to have leave with 10 solid prospects or 5 solid prospects, whatever the case might be. You want to have met with 5 of your current customers, but set some goals, and that will help you not only accomplish them, but also have a sense of accomplishment. And as you begin setting goals, you get much better at it, and you can track yourself against your goals. Always important. You want to make sure that you have a really clear self-introduction. And you should have really 2 of them, a 10-second one and a 30-second one. And I would say it's sort of a 5 to 10-second one. You want one that, very simply tells people what you do. Hi, I'm Bill Kenny. I'm with Meet. We help growth companies exhibit at trade shows. Boom. That's simple. And ideally that begins a conversation because you want to learn about them. You want to have a rapport going back and forth where you're learning about them, they're learning about you, you're investing in each other, and then you kind of figure out if it makes sense to continue the conversation. You want to make sure that you have a really clear value proposition. And where I see people go really wrong with value propositions is they often articulate them from their own perspective. Actually, a value proposition, well said, is spoken from the buyer's perspective. It's what somebody values of your product, not what you value of it. So, and it's not your estimation. You want to ask customers, what have you experienced since you've been buying our service? What has changed for you? What what don't you have to do now that you had to do before? How has it changed, whether it's your life or whether it's, your business, whatever the case might be. But the more you understand from your target customer what value you bring to them, the better you'll articulate it for others and the more you'll be able to attract others. But again, value proposition should always be from the buyer's perspective, not from the seller's perspective. You want to have your business cards, really important. I know there is sort of a movement, and it's not very many, but some people now going without business cards and preferring to do things electronic. I'll tell you, having something tangible that you hand to people and that they hand to you can be very helpful. And you'll see as we talk about taking notes later on that the business card becomes kind of an important tool for not just for you, but for the person that you're meeting. Take a pen. Pencils are nice, but unfortunately they smudge, and maybe within a few days of cards rubbing together in your pocket, you'll essentially have invisible ink if you use a pencil. So take a pen. Make sure it's whatever you write is indelible. And then comfortable shoes. You want to be able to walk with comfort and be just as strong on day 4 as you were on day 1, and so that you're not sidelined at all because your feet are sore. So we're now prepared. We've gone through the process to make sure we've sort of set the table and we're ready to go to this trade show, and we're walking in the door, and we want to make the most of this time. So we want to do a few things. The first thing we want to make sure that we do is that we do our big rocks first. I'm someone who exercises first thing in the morning because I know if I don't, I won't fit it in, likely any other time. It just gets too busy. And so some of you may have read Stephen Covey's 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. But the idea being that if we don't fit our big rocks in first, in other words, the most important things, then they won't ever fit. If we fill this glass jar with, smaller stones and then pebbles, and then sand and pack it all in and then pour water in it. And those are so many other things that we could fit in. The chances are, if we put those things in first, we wouldn't get our big rocks in. And so we want to make sure we get the big fundamental things. In other words, we want to have set up, make sure that the people we're going to meet, that's taken care of first, or the key boost that we want to stop by, that we take care of that first. Whatever the case is, we want to get in those most important things first and then move on to the sort of secondary or tertiary things that we need to do. So when we go to trade shows, and some of us are comfortable walking around, some of us have done it long enough that it's well within our comfort zone. Others, it's not. It's still sort of a building muscle. It's a skill that's building, and so you want to make sure that you exercise that muscle. You want to become more comfortable at being uncomfortable. Excuse me, at being uncomfortable. What does that mean? It means that you're going to need to walk up to people you don't know and introduce yourself. It means you're going to need to walk into a booth with maybe 2 or 3 or 4 people from the same company all talking to each other, and you have to be comfortable walking up and sort of interjecting yourself in the conversation to learn about their company. Not everybody has great booth etiquette. Sometimes little cliques of employees don't break up when a customer comes into the booth. So you need to be comfortable with making sure that you assert yourself in those situations so that you can make connections and move on. And ultimately, you're looking to sort of prosecute a lot of connections, meetings, but you have your own agenda that you need to make sure happens. So be comfortable at doing things that are outside of your comfort zone. One of the things I've seen work for many people is to model someone that they know who they feel is really good at, whether it's working a room, at introducing themselves, but pretend you're them for a day and go and do the activities that you believe they would do in the way you believe they would do it. And then tomorrow, do it again and continue to make it sort of their good habits, make those good habits yours, but model them. Think of that person. What would they do in this moment? How would they respond? How would they interject themselves in this situation? And do that. And before you know it, by the second and third and fourth day, it becomes much more comfortable and it becomes actually much more your own activity. So I mentioned just a few minutes ago that business cards are important, and here's why. When you meet someone, you want to be able to note where they fit in your world. So there are really 3 notes that we generally take. You may find other things that you want to notate on. So the first thing that we note on someone's business card, and we're very consistent across our organization, how we do this, we've kind of come up with our own code. The first thing we note, and it's just a simple number, 1, 2, or 3, for the value of this person or the speed at which we should follow up with them. So a 1 is sort of steaming hot. They should be followed up on immediately, like either that night or certainly within a day of the trade show ending. And then 2 is sort of lukewarm. They should be followed up on, but it's not urgent. And then number 3 is they're sort of nice to know and they can go in the database, but we don't really need any additional follow-up. And then 2 is the relevance. What relevance do they have to us or to you? And that would be, they're either a prospect, they're a current customer, maybe they're someone we hadn't yet met with or met at a customer's site or with a specific customer. They might be a strategic partner or a possible strategic partner. They might be a potential employee or another type of resource, but ultimately mark down what their relevance is. And then the third is who, and there could be 2 who's. One who should always be the person who collected the card. In other words, if I meet someone and I get their card, I write my initials down here. But if I'm met them, but someone else should follow up or someone else I'm going to pass it on to someone else, I write their initials down as well. So I just might write my initials BK slash and then their initials. But that way it's really easy to know what, later on, what the actions are for this particular person. And in our organization, particularly when we go to big events, we scan all the business cards and those go to someone centrally. And they, what I get back is a spreadsheet. And so having those notations on it is really important so that, I won't even look at the cards again. I'll just use the spreadsheet and be able to take my actions. And so it's a bit of a process for us. But so value or speed, then their relevance, and then who. Definitely want to make notes. So, okay, so this sort of sets us up for the follow-up, right? We've attended this event. It's been a day, it's been two, it's been 3 or 4 days, whatever the case is. And now we need to make sure that, this is kind of where the rubber meets the road, and making sure that our follow-up is really good, not only because it's important and it represents us, but ultimately the speed at which we follow up is it will really, in a long way, determine our results. And what you'll find with follow up is if we're not timely, in other words, if it doesn't happen the night we met them, or certainly within a day of the show ending, then it's going to be like fruit that is on a vegetable stand. It at some point will perish. It will spoil and go bad. And so we want to make sure that we are representing ourselves well. Most of our communication happens non-verbally. It happens, people learn more about us by what we do than what we say. And so if our follow-up is solid and we're reliable and we communicate reasonably well, we're going to go a long way to building a good relationship. But how quickly we follow up is, communicates again a lot about us. We want to make sure that we're really, really timely. And, it's funny, a lot of people sort of hold off going, oh, everybody's going to follow up immediately. Guess what? Most people don't follow up. So you want to make sure that you do follow up, and you follow up quickly, because you'll immediately separate yourself from everybody else. And if they do follow up, it's probably fairly generic, and you want to follow up personally. So once we followed up, then we certainly may have additional follow-ups, because we want to, especially of the number ones and the number twos, we want to make sure that we, get those people into the pipeline, whichever pipeline that may be. But then they need to go into our lead nurturing system. And again, whether they're a prospect, whether they're a potential strategic partner, whether they're a potential employee, we want to have a way to continue to build the relationship. Because ultimately, when we meet someone for the first time, be it at a trade show or a networking event or whatever, our relationship is superficial. It is fledgling. It is, the seed is in the ground, and we haven't even watered it or fertilized it or cared for the earth and the soil at all yet. But ultimately, we want to have a process where we're nurturing that relationship, because we need to move it from being superficial to being something where there's trust and intimacy. And in order to do that, it's going to take a series of interactions, a series of exposures, before our relationship with that person gets to a place where they agree to a next step, we agree to a next step, whatever, kind of whatever needs to transpire in order for us to move to the next level. But ultimately, it may be that we want to meet one-on-one. Well, they may have to come to one of our webinars first, or download a white paper, or have any of many other types of interactions that would cause them to go, wow, these guys are credible. They have something that I need. Let me schedule some time with them. And we also want to take a minute in any of these experiences to record the results and the lessons learned. So what are we going to do different the next time? So making sure that, we set some goals in the outset, and we want to make sure that we measure our results against those goals, and then record, what are we going to do different? Are there some preparation things that we should change? Are there some on the floor things that we should change? Are there some follow-up things that we should change? But ultimately, we're going to be doing this again. We want to make sure that we continue to get better at it, more effective, more efficient, and so on. So we've attended a trade show, we followed up, we've gotten prepared, we've done all these critical things. And so the idea here is to make sure that when you're going to these events, you use your time really well, you leverage it, and you meet and get together with people that are ultimately going to be very valuable for you and you for them. And again, the kind of the big rocks in what we just talked about are really three things. So boil this down to three things. Number one, focus on the target persona or personas. So identify who they are, focus on them, and leverage the relationships that you're making to meet more of those target personas. Leverage your time well. Use, again, put those big rocks in first. Make sure you get those done. Everything else will feel wonderful after you get those big rocks in. Again, I feel great after my exercise at the beginning of the day because I know I'm going to be a much better, stronger person and able to do what I ultimately want to do because my body's working better. And then we want to follow up fast. We want to make sure our follow up is done well, done quickly, and we're going to differentiate ourselves from everybody else that is at the trade show by having good and fast follow-up. So I hope you found this enjoyable. I'm sharing my contact information now. Again, Bill Kenny, country code 1-860-573-4821. And the email is bill@meet, MEET, ROI.com. So meet, returnoninvestment.com. It's been a real pleasure to be with you. I hope you found this valuable. I absolutely invite you to email me or text me questions. The phone number is also on WhatsApp, so feel free to shoot me over questions. And I hope your trade show experience, whether this next one for you is your first one or your 100th one, I hope it is much, much more productive. And please let me know how it goes. I'd love to hear stories of how you did and what you're going to do different at the next one based on your most recent experience. So thanks again. Have a wonderful day. Bye for now.